Hey guys, my name is Dan and welcome back to another video. In 2022, Bachmann's new N-scale Thomas range was getting off to a great start. They had already released Thomas, Percy, and James, all three of which were pretty well received, but they were often compared to the previously released Tomix models, with fans disagreeing on which range was better overall. So fans were obviously excited when in 2022, Bachmann announced two characters that had never been released before in N-scale, Gordon and Emily. It was even the first time Emily's basis would ever be released in N-scale. 2 years later, and 4 years into the Bachmann N-scale Thomas range, we finally got the release of the Sterling single engine, Emily, and her coaches. So were these models worth the wait? No they weren't, and I'm very disappointed, and by the end of the video I hope you'll understand why. But first let's start with the unboxing. Before we get into the unboxing, I just want to say that statistically speaking, not a damn one of you is subscribed, so I'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe and check out my future videos. Anyway, this box is nothing new if you're familiar with the Bachmann Thomas N-scale range. Emily is encased in a nice solid plastic box, and the back shows all the standard logos, the side shows the item name and number. And overall I really like this box design as it allows you to clearly see the model before buying it, and it keeps the model safe while being reusable at the same time, unlike Bachmann's HO scale Thomas boxes. After you break your fingernails trying to get the top off, Emily is inside some clear plastic with the instructions and the warranty on the other side. Not really much else to say about the unboxing, so with that out of the way, let's get into the model. Okay, now that we got the model in front of us, it's time to ask, was this worth the wait? Well, speaking of worth, let's take a look at the price. If you buy Emily from Bachmann directly, it'll be $189. You can almost go to the doctor one time for that kind of money. But luckily no one with any sense actually buys from Bachmann directly. I got mine from Train World at $115, which is a much better price. A better price if it was actually a good model, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Up front we have the nice silver buffers and a blank running board, giving me serious Tomix vibes here. This confused me at first because Bachmann usually has a lot of running board detail on their N-scale models. So was Bachmann being lazy, or does Emily actually not have any running board details? I went into the Great Library of Alexandria, known as the Thomas & Friends Wiki, to see what the deal is. First image I see, Emily has running board detail. Case closed. Bachmann is a lazy, garbage, doo-doo toy company that steals your money with crap models. But then I looked at another picture of Emily from the model series, and look, she doesn't have any running board detail. Never mind, Bachmann is actually based in model series build. But this model is supposed to be based on the CGI series, so did Bachmann make a hybrid? Well, no, because I looked at even more images of Emily in CGI, and yeah, no running board detail on these ones. So this is accurate to a certain version of Emily, specifically a pre-Tale of the Brave Emily, as that's when she gained the running board detail for the first time. So why did Bachmann go for this look? Better question, who cares? Nobody. They probably just wanted to make the face easier to see, and I'm probably the first person who ever noticed this. When I say this model sucks, I'm not talking about the running board detail at all, I promise. And if I talk any more about running board detail on my channel, I'm gonna have to rename the channel Dan's Running Board Discussion Hours, so let's just move on to something else. She's also missing the little holes here. Anyway, the overall proportions of Emily are pretty much perfect. Emily has one of the more difficult shapes to reproduce, but Bachmann did a pretty good job here. The lining is nicely applied with the gold on the boiler and the yellow on the sides, the handrails are molded on, pretty standard for Thomas models across the board, and the whistle is separately fitted, which is a really nice touch at this scale. The color of the paint looks unconvincing when zoomed in like this, but it looks perfectly fine at a distance. You can barely even see it behind the giant gold safety valve, which also looks great, along with the gold cap on the funnel. The cab windows, also lined in gold, are open, and inside the cab is nothing. It's N-scale, so I get it, but on the bright side, there's plenty of room on the footplate to add figures if you want. I think these steps are accurate, but I couldn't find any shots that actually show it well enough to compare. Definitely be careful with these when handling the model though, cause they feel like they'd be pretty easy to break off. Looking at the bottom of the model, I'm actually very happy about something here. The number one complaint the Bachmann N-scale Thomas models have gotten is about their wheels and side rods being chunky and having fake spokes. Well, we actually see the opposite of that here. You can actually see through the real spokes this time, and the side rods are a lot less chunky than the previous models. The Sterling Singles single driving wheel is one of the most beautiful looking mechanisms out there, so it's nice to see that Bachmann really did it justice here. Especially because this is actually the first Sterling single ever in N-scale, so if anyone wanted to make a non-Thomas Sterling single, then this is probably the chassis they'll use. The tender is also recreated very nicely with the printed lining, molded handrails, and these great looking rails on top. The coal load looks pretty realistic, but it is piled kind of high here in the back. It looks like it should be spilling out over the water cap. No big deal though. The opening for shoveling coal is also represented. The back is pretty bare, just like the front, and both ends do feature the standard Rapido style N-scale couplers. The bottom of the tender has some great rivet detail, and the wheels are metal, which is great to see. Unfortunately, I'm not a fan of the tender drawbar at all. It's just a little piece of plastic with a bar that slides into a hole, and if you don't put Emily and the tender on the rails at the same time, there's going to be no chance of getting them together. There's no system for them to lock in and stay connected, which was a nice feature I failed to mention on the Tomix James model. There's no electrical connection here either, which is something I'll talk more about in the mechanism. Last thing is the face, which looks pretty perfect. I mean, it's Emily, and it looks like Emily, it's CGI, I don't really have a lot to say about it. Overall, I have to say the detail on this model is better than I expected. It's nice to see Bachmann models get an upgrade to their wheels, and all the present detail looks pretty great. No paint mistakes or poorly applied parts either. Unfortunately, I can't say as many good things about the mechanism of this model or the coaches, which is what we'll be getting to next. This is where the negative part of the video begins. So unboxing these is the same story as Emily, just with no paperwork, and at first glance these coaches look pretty accurate to their depiction in CGI, but after looking deeper, these models are a fucking scam. These are literally retooled Annie and Clarabelle models. No really looks. Side by side, these are the exact same body. My Annie and Clarabelle have been painted red, but I haven't modified their shape at all. You can see these window gaps aren't supposed to be on Emily's coaches, and there's an incorrect number of these white lines on top, which tells you that the whole shape and everything is just copied from Annie and Clarabelle, not made specifically for Emily's coaches. Yeah, the bottom and tops of the coaches are new, and they look accurate to the show, but the middle is literally a reskinned Annie and Clarabelle body. They went out of their way to make a new top and bottom, but couldn't make the middle piece its own unique thing, they just had to copy Annie and Clarabelle. They even had to change the front to remove the faces, but still couldn't be bothered to actually make the mold accurate. And they didn't even fill in the window lining correctly. It's supposed to be thicker than just one layer, but here it's so thin that you can barely even see it. By the way, these cost $41 from Bachmann directly and $25 at the retailers. That means you're going to pay $50 total for these two coaches, and they're barely accurate reskins of an existing model. Call me overly critical and say I'm nitpicking if you want, but I think that's bullshit. For the price we pay, we should get models with an accurate shape at the very least. These coaches even cost more than Annie and Clarabelle, by the way, and those have printed faces and names. These are just generic coaches. The wheels on them are metal though, so that's nice. And now we're moving on to the mechanism, somehow even worse than the previous section. So the Bachmann HO scale Thomas models are well known for having pretty crap mechanisms, but the N-scale models, in great contrast to that, are known for having some of the best mechanisms out there in N-scale. So I obviously had high hopes for Emily. I'm not going to open this model up because I'm scared, but that doesn't stop me from having a few problems with the mechanism without even having to open it up and look. First, one good thing, Emily's big wheel isn't the only driven wheel. The wheels directly in front of her main driving wheels are also driven, which gives her a nice strength upgrade. That was definitely necessary on this model, as it would be pretty underpowered if it only had one driving wheel. Unfortunately, that's about all the good I have to say about this model's mechanism. There's a big problem here. Those two driving axles are also the only ones that pick up any power. This model has 14 wheels and only 4 of them pick up power, and that is just fucking stupid. N-scale models are already finicky to begin with, so they usually go out of their way to have as many extra pickups as possible to make sure they never lose power. Other than both the Bachmann and Tomix James models, every single N-scale tender engine I have has tender pickups wired to the body. Even the 19-year-old Tomix Henry has tender pickups. But for over $100 in 2024, you don't get that here. You don't even get pickups on all the wheels on the main engine. You get 2 axles and that's it. And the pickups in the front here are also unreliable for some reason. When I first put this model on the tracks, it didn't run at all, and I found out that at certain positions, these front wheels just don't pick up power consistently. The big wheels are fine, luckily, and that leaves you with basically 1.5 axles to pick up power. Over $100, and that's what you get. Even with the bad pickup situation, a flywheel could go a long way to help this model if it loses power occasionally. But unfortunately, for over $100 and in 2024, you don't get a flywheel. Let me remind you that the 2002 version of Tomix Thomas does have a flywheel. This geriatric model, already old enough to be graduating college, has a flywheel. And I don't really mean to go on a whole Japan superiority rant right now, but every single N-scale model I have from Japan has a flywheel in it. Just saying. Aside from that, assuming this model has the same motor as the other Bachmann N-scale Thomas models, I'm sure it will run well for a long time, but it's always going to be held back by its lack of a flywheel and proper pickups. It's sad to see when the rest of this range is known for being the very best in N-scale running quality. But with all that said, let's put Emily on the tracks and see how she actually runs now that I've said all that. Okay guys, sorry for the audio change, but I just wanted to film this part live. Here is Emily down on the track so we can see her performance and speed. And the first thing I want to do is just show you what happens if you put this model at 10% speed here on the controller. Already it's moving that fast. This is 10% speed right here. 10% speed, and it's already really moving as fast as you would want Emily to go. Honestly, that's probably the speed you would want her to pull her coaches at, and she's already going there at 10% speed. So if we try to start at 0 and see how slowly we can make Emily go here, we really have very little room on the controller to work with here. I'm already halfway up to 10% and she's not moving. Oh, there, that's just below 10%, and she starts moving and she's cut out now. So trying to give her a little, and there, that's pretty much as slow as she can go. I mean, I'm at 10% now and she's cut out again. That's right below 10, and I can get her to go about that slow. Trying to go a little slower, and she cut out again. And this is, I'm moving the controller millimeters here to change her speed, because like there's very little room, because that's how fast she goes at 10% on the controller. Anything above that, it's ridiculous. See, if I crank it up to 20 right now, she's cut out again, but I just cranked it up to 20. Let's see how fast she goes, and she is zooming. That's way faster than you would ever want. You can also see how quickly she cuts off there, if you can hear the controller. No flywheel. She's cut off immediately right there. And that's at 20%. If you go, even if you go to 30% on the controller, she is out of there. You can see she's wheel slipping at the startup because of just how ridiculously fast she's going. Even at 30%, full speed you don't even want to see, right? But going back to 10%, this is pretty much as slow as you can have her reliably go. You try to crank it down to a slower speed, and there, she just cut out 3 seconds in, and that's at like 8%, right below 10. And she can't even run reliably. And I've cleaned the track before this, but just to prove my point, I want to bring in a similar engine here. This is the Tomix Percy model, and this also has 4 pickups. I picked this because it was the most fair. It's the only other 040 I have. Emily's not an 040, but they didn't give her pickups on anything except 4 wheels, so she might as well be an 040 when it comes to picking up power. And let's just see how this Percy runs. So got it at 0 right now, gonna crank it up, and oh, there it goes. Started on its own, didn't need to touch it or anything. And look at the slow speed of this model. And this is just under 20% on the controller, so there's much more range here. Oh, I cut out a little bit, you know, I can forgive it. This model's only 19 years old, but I mean, look at that slow speed. I don't even talk about the slow speed in my Tomix reviews because I think these models are 20 years old, 20 plus years old, whatever. Who cares about the slow speed? They're probably not that good, but This is outperforming a model I just paid over $100 for. And this thing, I paid like $70 for it in a set. I didn't even pay for it single. I bought a whole freaking train set. For example, here's 30, right? Here's 40. Here's 50. So you have a lot more range of speed with this model, right? That's 50%. And you can see, if you can hear me turning off the controller, and you see Percy keeps going, this model has a flywheel. 19-year-old baby model, 040, and it has a flywheel. Granted, it's a little bit bigger, there's more room in here, but I have other N-scale models Emily's size that have a flywheel. And Emily needs it. 040s need it at this scale. They need reliable pickups and or a flywheel. Emily has plenty of other wheels that could have been given pickups. Honestly, plenty of space to have a flywheel. Could have had the tender driven along with the axles. Could have made it tender driven, put a flywheel in the tender. And just to prove a little bit of a point, I'm going to put Percy at 30%. Right, that's a decent speed right there, 30%. I'm going to leave the controller on that same speed. Right, controller, same speed, haven't touched it. You just saw Percy running at that speed. Now here's Emily. Now I'm going to turn it on. Look at that. That is ridiculous. This thing is geared like a fucking jet engine. What is this? Okay, I've zoomed out a little bit here so you can see the controller, right? This is a standard Kato controller. And just looking, see, we're on 10% right here. And look how fast she's going, right? If I crank up the controller just to this second dot right here, zooming. Try to crank it back down to 10. Try to do the slow speed. Look how little room we have before she just stops to try and have slow speed. She's cut out again. Look how little room there is here to try and make a slow speed happen. And she's cut out again. See, we've got a decent slow speed, crank it up just a tiny bit, and whoop, she's going fast again. Crank it down, slow speed. Turn it up a tiny bit, and look how fast she's going. You have so little control with this engine. This is the worst gearing I've seen on a model ever, honestly. Ever. This is the worst geared N-scale model I have ever seen. Just again, looking at Percy. Okay, here's the controller. There he goes. Didn't need to be tapped. He's going. And he's got plenty of room for slow speed here. See, we're at the 20, and he's going slow. So much room to crank up the speed here before we get up to a decent speed. And then there you got your kind of moderately fast speed at 50% on the controller right there. And you can see him continuing to run because he has a flywheel. Little Percy model from 20 years ago has a flywheel. Emily model from 2024, no flywheel. Let's get her back on the track. You can see the same speed there, haven't changed the speed. Zooming. Absolutely zooming. This is beyond any speed you would ever want on an N-scale model. So, was this model worth the wait? I think I've made my thoughts pretty clear here. No, this is a piece of garbage. Sure, you put it on the track, you turn it on, and it works, usually. And yeah, it looks like Emily. That's enough for the majority of people. That's enough for people who will get the model for free for Christmas. But for anyone who actually cares about a model being decent for the money they paid for it, this is a load of garbage. This is about $170 total as a set if you buy Emily and the coaches. And Emily's detail is great. She looks accurate to the show, but the coaches, they are literally overpriced reskins of Annie and Clarabelle. And Emily's mechanism is the worst I've ever seen in N-scale. Literally the worst model I own, and I have bought a lot of cheap garbage. Not enough pickups, no flywheel, and terrible gearing and speed control. It's clear from the little that I've seen of the new N-Scale Gordon that that's where Bachmann was putting all their resources over the last 2 years. Emily definitely got the short stick here. So don't buy this Emily unless Emily is like your absolute favorite character. Just get Gordon, who looks to run a lot better from what little I've seen of him, although I don't own him yet, so I can't verify that. It's a real shame to see this, considering just how highly regarded Bachmann's N-Scale Thomas stuff was up until this point. And don't think I'm hating on this model just to hate for views or whatever. Believe me, I really wanted to get good value for my money here. I wanted to write a good review for this model, but it just let me down. Anyways guys, that's going to be about it for this video. I'm sorry about how negative this video was, and I hope the next one can be a bit more positive, whatever it is. Gordon will be coming eventually, but I'm kinda broke right now, so the next video will probably be a Tomix review. Anyways guys, thank you all for watching. Be sure to comment, like, subscribe, rate, favorite, share, +1, anything else you can do on YouTube, and I will see you later.